criminals in court who spit on their judges in rage. Today, we're talking about those that have been sentenced to spend the rest of their lives behind bars. This means they have nothing to lose, so they're not scared to hurt the people in the courtroom. Mass murderer Bass Webb.
He's already been convicted of killing one former girlfriend, and next month, Bass Webb is scheduled to stand trial for the murder of a second former girlfriend. Police say the victim, Sabrina Vaughn, was killed in Montgomery County in 2003, but the trial will be held in Rowan County, where a hearing in the case was held today.
This is 37-year-old mass murderer Bass Webb, who murdered two ex-girlfriends, Bryia Runiewicz and Sabrina Vaughn, in Kentucky between 2003 and 2009. Webb has a long list of charges and violent crimes and is serving life in prison. In 2009, Webb attempted to murder a police officer and a correctional officer. A surveillance video taken outside of Kentucky jail captured the moment when Webb accelerated his car and tried to run over two jail employees. One man was able to get out of the way, but the other was injured after Webb's vehicle pinned him against a wall. It's still a mystery why he did this, considering he had previously served 3 months in jail on assault charges. But it doesn't end here.
There's no way I want to try this case or have any further proceedings, or I'll have to see you for one further setting. Set for the very end of next week.
At his first court appearance, Webb was informed by Judge Vanessa Dixon that she was excusing herself from the trial because she has a personal connection with the jail employees he targeted. In response, Bass spits right at her face as she talks, caught completely unaware of what just happened. Watch how he did it with no remorse. But Bass's bad behavior is still going to continue. But this incident is far from the last time Webb will spit in the face of the law. While waiting to go to trial, he and 4 other inmates incited a riot inside the Fayette County Detention Center. After being shot with beanbag bullets, then hit in the neck by a pepper ball, Webb whips a metal telephone box at a correctional officer. Webb was found guilty of third-degree assault and sentenced to 15 years in prison for starting the riot. And for his attempt to run over the 2 jail employees, he was found guilty of 2 counts of attempted murder and got an additional 37 years.
If I were to launch this at someone 10 feet away, because this is capable of stopping that, does not mean that that is not readily capable of causing death or serious physical injury.
Webb was facing a total of 52 years behind bars, and things were just about to get much worse for him as more disturbing accusations were on the way. We will find out that Bass knew no limits when it came to violence and brutality. While incarcerated, he was charged with the gruesome murder of an ex-girlfriend, Bryia Runiewicz. The details of her death are bone-chilling and utterly sickening. Bryia was a former Bourbon County jail employee who was studying to become a law enforcement officer. Bryia was due to begin a job at the Department of Homeland Security 3 days from the date when she got murdered in her Harrison County home on July 31st, 2009. She was living with her 2 daughters, aged 7 and 8, when she started dating Bass Webb, only a couple of months before her death. Webb was released from prison just 6 months before he killed Bryia. Apparently, the two had broken up because of Webb's jealousy over Bryia mourning her daughter's father, who had passed away a month before. Just days after they broke up, Webb turned up at her house at night. Bryia was aware of Webb's anger, but she had probably never imagined what lengths he would go to seek revenge. Bass violated her in the middle of the night, and didn't just murder her after that, but mercilessly beheaded her. After murdering Bryia, Webb went to jail and tried to run over 2 prison guards. He told him that he had just cut off his ex-girlfriend's head and that they should find her before her daughters wake up and see their mother. Was this an act of, compassion? Facing a possible death sentence if convicted at trial, Webb pleaded guilty to the murder and got an additional 50 years. But Webb wasn't just guilty of the murder. He had hidden another murder, which the police found nearly a decade later. Webb had spent 5 years in prison when he was called into court yet again, this time for killing a different girlfriend, whom he had killed way back in 2003. The cold case came back to haunt him after a jailhouse tip led to the discovery of the woman's remains. In 2010, the police discovered the skeletal remains of Sabrina Vaughn in a shallow grave. As a former boyfriend, Webb instantly came under suspicion for her murder. The pair had been dating in 2003 when she mysteriously vanished. He was then put on trial for the murder of Sabrina Vaughn, but then was found guilty and sentenced to life behind bars. At his trial for the Vaughn murder, Webb appeared in court with a sinister look, shocking those in attendance. A closer look showed him with a controversial tattoo on the back of his skull and a demented murder hit list. It reads those that must die. All judges, all prosecutors, all cops, the media. Below that, 3 rats have been scratched out, and many more, plus an expletive. On the other side, gruesome details emerge about how Webb choked his then-girlfriend to death and buried her body in a shallow grave. When the judge asked Webb to come forward, he remained seated in smiles. Finally, after more than a week in the courtroom, the judge reads the jury's verdict. Guilty of the offense of intentional murder. Webb is then sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole after 25 years.
Oh my God!
Damien Inman. This is 30-year-old convict Damien Inman, who had been given life sentence for the murder of a 75-year-old Mary Alice Stutz.
Next, we go to Dillon, South Carolina for the trial of Damien Inman. The 22-year-old was charged with murder, kidnapping, and armed robbery, among other charges, in the death of 75-year-old Mary Stutz.
In addition, he has been found guilty of numerous other charges: 30 years for armed robbery, 5 years for conspiracy, and 5 years for possession of a weapon during a violent crime, all to run consecutively.
The verdict, however, was overturned due to an error in jury selection. So Inman was tried a second time with the same result. Guilty on all charges.
Upon hearing this verdict, Damien tried to punch a Dillon County Sheriff's deputy and spit on officers and prosecutors.
But as officers try to place him in cuffs, Inman punches a deputy. Then his sister jumps over a railing to try to help her brother. She was arrested for contempt of court. Then things got even uglier.
Oh my God!
Inman spits at Deputy Solicitor Kernard Redmond, as well as the Dillon County Sheriff. Inman's quickly removed, and the judge orders a recess.
The details of the case are harrowing, and the judge termed this case as one of the top 10 as far as cruelty and inhumaneness and lack of regard for human life. The deputy solicitor also noticed that Inman had no expression of remorse in his testimony. What's more, Damien was only 17 when he committed this heinous crime. This was murder committed in cold blood with no resistance from the poor victim. So, what really happened? It was in August 2009 when Damien, along with 18-year-old brother Lorenzo Inman and 15-year-old friend John Henry Bridges, knocked on Stutz's Dillon County house and asked for a drink of water. She directed them to an outside faucet, but they pretended not to know how to work the water, and she came out to help them. The poor lady had no idea how her kindness would be repaid. It was then, Bridges said, that Lorenzo Inman hit her in the back of the head with a gun. They asked her where the money was. They looked around, didn't see anything, and found the keys to the car. Damien Inman pulled the car around back, and they put her in the trunk. They could hear her saying, "Oh Lord," in the trunk, Bridges added, so Lorenzo turned up the radio so they couldn't hear her. They eventually made their way to Admirable Drive off Bunker Hill Road in the Little Rock area. They pulled her out of the trunk. She told him that they didn't have to do this. Bridges testified that Damien shot her in the head twice and dragged her into the woods. The 15-year-old and Lorenzo Inman were captured the next day after a high-speed chase that ended on Woodill Drive off Highway 30 South. Damien Inman was taken into custody at Dillon High School. She tried to help 3 men with water on a hot day. And what does she get in return for that? Death. A brutal, senseless death, prosecutor Ship Daniel said. It was like killing a dog. A confidential informant made some shocking revelations that proved Damien was not at all sorry for what he had done. He said Damien Inman had a conversation with him at the Dillon County Detention Center. Inman told him that he shot Stutz in the face first, and when her head turned, he shot her again. He told him how they planned to put the crime off on bridges. Inman told the informant that killing Stutz was like killing a dog. Was Damien psychologically sound? It's difficult to get to terms with the brutality with which the murder took place, without any provocation from the victim. The lawyers tried to answer the pressing question of why he did it, and looked at all possible factors that may have contributed to this brutal murder. It was revealed in testimony from Dr. Joshi that Inman seemed to have learning disabilities. At the time of the school testing in 2009, he had a 5th grade reading comprehension level, although he was in 9th grade. He has spent a period of time in alternative schools because he was expelled from regular school. He also scored below average on most of the categories on the intelligence scale. What was even more worrying was Inman's behavioral problems and alcohol and substance use. Inman said he started drinking wine Mad Dog 2020 at the age of 12, introduced to him by a cousin. He said for him, it was a normal thing, and he liked how it made him feel. But it doesn't end here. Even while awaiting trial at the Dillon County Detention Center, Inman had disciplinary problems such as public self-abuse and disruptive behavior. He refused to get along with anyone and was moved a lot. A female officer even filed an indecent exposure charge against him. Inman won a new trial due to a legal error during the December 2010 trial. The South Carolina Supreme Court reversed the conviction and ordered Inman a new trial, as Inman had been denied his right to challenge a juror during jury selection in the 2010 trial. The retrial was done for the first time in the history of the state and took place in June 2015. But it did not help Inman's case, as the jury once again found him guilty.
22-year-old Damien Inman sat quietly inside this courtroom, showing no emotion when a jury convicted him in the killing of 75-year-old Mary Alice Stutz in 2009. Then minutes later, this is what happened.
Oh my God!
At this trial, when the Stutz family was taken out for a brief conference, Inman seized the opportunity and spat in the face of the deputy solicitor and sheriff.
Oh my God!
His face contorted with anger and resentment as he was carried out of court by 2 officers with hands pinned at the back. After a while, he was seen dragged back into the courtroom with a spit guard and detention center attire.
15 minutes later, Inman returns, shackled, wearing a safety smock and spit shield.
We are pleased that the judge granted our request to sentence the defendant to life in prison, said Assistant Solicitor Ship Daniel. Given the heinous, senseless nature of this crime, anything short of life in prison would have been inadequate. We are confident that the court considered all appropriate factors in reaching its decision, and on behalf of the family of Mrs. Stutz, we are thankful. The case has taken a mysterious turn recently when Inman's brother, Lorenzo, at 31 years old, was found dead on May 29th in his cell. According to Christy Shane, the director of communications for the South Carolina Department of Corrections, he did not have a roommate, and foul play is not suspected. The department's Office of Investigations and Intelligence is looking into the case and are awaiting results from a toxicology test. This is it for today's roundup of one of the most brutal murderers who had no fear for the law or their life. Don't forget to give a thumbs up to this video and hit subscribe to stay tuned to more riveting updates into the world of crime and justice.